Hey there, Dalton and Cloud here. Today we're going over the best ways to prepare for your next certification exam. But before we begin, if you could please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and then go ahead and tap that notification bell. I'd really appreciate it. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. So the first subject we're going to have going over studying and preparing for an exam, one of the best methods was going to be hands-on learning or learning by doing. As we see here by this little metric that they have on this post by Cloud Guru, we learn faster, we learn deeper. In fact, 85% of our learners say they retain more by doing. I feel like that number is close to accurate as far as like the general populace. A lot of people may say they are more textbook smart and they don't need to, or some people say they learn with hands-on. Some people say they learn better by textbook. Even if you do learn better by textbook, you're going to retain information better by doing. So, you could go out and you could study all you want, but if you can't actually have a way to implement what you studied, it's not going to stick as well. So that's why that's one of the best study resource methods you could have. That includes going through, conducting labs, even if it's a home lab, or going to somewhere like IT Pro TV or Linux Academy, A Cloud Guru, even some Udemy courses, and having something where you could like practice an actual lab. The great part about A Cloud Guru and Linux Academy is you could actually utilize their service and have your own lab environment that you could spin up, so you're not really paying for anything. Another great resource by A Cloud Guru, which we're going to come back to, is going to be the actual cloud environments they have, but we'll talk about that later on. So the next study resource that we want to go over, it's going to be quizzes and practice exams. So quizzes and practice exams are great. You studied a domain or a subject. You want to go through and do a quick test on what you learned. So that's what quizzes are for. And then, you're done with studying all the domains. You want to make sure that you understand the subject to the best of your knowledge. That's what the practice exams are for. So that's why that's our second study resource that we want to understand when going and preparing for an exam. First one is, of course, going to be textbook and courses. I always say it's great to have two different study materials that you could utilize for the CCNA video we just had recently. I know I showed you one of the books that I actually purchased and I have, as well as some of the study resources that I utilized when I started preparing for the CCNA exam. So having coursework and textbook that you could go through and study and prepare with, that's going to be our third best study resource that we want to utilize when preparing for an exam and study method. Next up, it's just going to be having someone like a mentor or someone like a coach in this case. IT Pro TV does have this service where it's more on the premium side, but they do have where you have access to either learning coaches or mentors that you could utilize when preparing. Now, the great thing about this, and this kind of goes into learning with hands-on, some people may learn a subject, but they won't learn it as well if they don't know how they could use it in a standard business practice. Now, I know even after taking the Solutions Architect Associate, it was still somewhat vague on what I would be doing with all this information that I learned. Now, that's because sometimes it is harder to really visualize what you're going to be doing if you've never seen it used in business practice before. That's why having a learning coach who could kind of say from their field experience and what they've utilized that knowledge for could kind of put it into a perspective to make it easier for you to understand the content. Now, I'm not saying you need to. $50 a month is a lot, especially when you're trying to use this knowledge usually to make more money, and you may not be in a situation where you are able to do that, but I do highly suggest, if not using this, going on LinkedIn, find a mentor that you could add in your area or someone who may have worked with you before and may have a little bit of hands-on that field that you're trying to get into. Or just go to a meetup session, find someone who is in that field who may be able to help mentor you or push you in the right direction. That's going to be the next study resource material. Although you wouldn't normally think a mentor would be resource material for preparing for an exam, but I do think it is helpful. So next up, it's going to be flashcards. You've done this for years. I know a lot of people have done this since they were in middle school, high school. You're preparing for vocabulary tests or something, and you need to know what a certain piece of information means. Just having a simple flashcard deck. So I know A Cloud Guru, aka Linux Academy, they're great for this. I know on this is the LPI Linux Essentials, and there's all these community-made flashcard decks as well as the one made by the instructor with 106 cards. It's a simple way to help study, but it's one of the most effective ones if you're trying to quickly learn some information. Now, this is kind of a bonus, but I really wanted to come back to this. I know here I showed you that with A Cloud Guru, with their Personal Plus membership, you do have the ability to learn by doing. So in their virtual Azure, GCP, and AWS environments, if you're studying for any cloud exam, I 100% suggest you go and you make an account. Even if you're paying for a Personal Plus for a site account like A Cloud Guru has, I 100% suggest you go and you make your own account on one of these platforms. Now, the reason I suggest that is one of the best ways I've ever found to study is learn by failing. So what do I mean by that? When I first was going for my Solutions Architect Associate, or I should say the second time I was going for it, we'll get to that in a second. But the second time I studied for it, I failed. Now what I mean by that is I set up a few lab environment scenarios, and I was going through the labs with my environment, and at the end of the month, I saw that I owed about $20 on my account. Now, that was because I didn't close a certain environment piece properly, or I ran the wrong instance or something like that. But I went through and I found out why I failed, why I owed that money, and I never made that mistake again. Now, if you're ever... Now, it may not be you owe a certain amount of money. Maybe you're running a Linux Docker container or something, and you're doing it in a test environment for your website. Well, you connect the nodes improperly, or you remove the wrong file, and you can't go back and undo it. So that may not be money wasted, but that's going to be time wasted because you ruined something or you got rid of something and you couldn't get it back. But you will learn from that and you will never make that mistake again. And that's why learning by failing is probably one of the best ways of studying and preparing for an exam. Now, I know I said that was kind of the last piece of information, but to help you prepare for your next exam, but I do have one more. So you may or may not know this about me, but before a few years ago, I did not have any certification exam. I didn't even have I was even afraid to take or intimidated to take my CompTIA A+ certification exam. So, it was just so much money for the exam, and that's a big hurdle for a lot of people. It's how much money these exams are. I understand that completely. That's why in some cases, or at least in my case, what I had to do to get myself the confidence to go through and take that exam was I had to take an exam that wasn't as expensive. So in my case, it was the AWS Cloud Practitioner. I went through, I studied for it. I took in this case, I took it on A Cloud Guru, and I took the practice exam over and over and over again. I took all of the quizzes. I went over all of the content I could over and over again until I passed every single one twice in a row with close to 100%. That was the only way I was going through and going to actually take the test. I went through, this is post-epidemic, but I went through, I went to my local learning center. I went in the room that they put you in, and I tested for it. And I passed it on the first try, and I almost passed it with a 100% completion. That gave me the confidence to go through and take my next exam that I wanted to take, which was the Solutions Architect Associate. Now, I failed. I failed spectacularly. It was not close. It wasn't that far away, but it was not close. So after I failed, I was not diminished and deterred from taking an exam. I went back, I studied for another 3 months. That's when I got my incursion of pay to play, and I owed some money because I didn't close anything properly. But after that, I passed. I passed by a decent amount too. And then the exam I've been afraid of taking for years, the CompTIA Security Plus. I went through, I studied for about a month and a half, about a month and a half, and I passed it on my first try with close to a perfect score. Now, I did that over the past couple years, and I just have to say that initial exam that I took for the easier exam, the Cloud Practitioner, even though it was a fundamental level exam. So for those of you going the Azure route, they're called the fundamentals. Even for a fundamental exam like that, it gave me the confidence to go forward and take that exam and pass it on my first attempt. And then to go through and take all those other exams. So, just that last piece, it's not really a study method, but just something to help you, maybe if you're in a similar predicament that I was, is just go through and give it a shot. And do that for something that may be simpler, that you maybe don't need. Maybe it's not IT, maybe it's project management. You don't need a yellow belt or a green belt, but you know what? Getting that yellow belt, getting that green belt, that's going to really help you feel more confident going forward, so you could so you could eventually have a Lean Six Sigma black belt. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. You enjoy.